Everyone, Karen from Stitches and Things, Victoria, Lakes Entrance. We're actually in Meetung, but very close to Lakes Entrance, small wool shop, and we love to create. So what I'm doing today is we're going to have a look at, this is the Gypsy Cowl. So I'm wearing the aqua version of it. We're not going to get through the whole pattern. We haven't got time, but what we will do is we're going to have a look at puffs, popcorns and texture. And I'm also going to show you how we start a row without chain and how we change colour. So stay tuned and I will show you a whole lot of things. Okay, so first of all, I will just point out the difference between puffs and popcorns. So this one is a puff. See how it's got long strands there and it's sort of pulled together there. So that's a puff. The popcorns, they're made up of trebles. Now, this whole pattern and how I'm going to speak to you today is in Australian or UK terminology, not US terminology. So if you're used to US terminology, this would be a double crochet, but I am calling it a treble because we're in Australia. So that is a bunch of trebles pulled together. So that's a popcorn, that's a puff. And the other thing we're going to have a look at today is back posts and front posts. But I've got a little, just a rubbishy piece here. There it is. I've just done a few trebles along here. I've left a couple of spaces. So when you're reading a pattern, there's a few things that you need to know. Your pattern is going to tell you what stitch to make and then where to put it. So it'll tell you one treble and it'll tell you where you need to put it. Make sure that if you're asked to put it into a stitch, that it goes underneath the V's. Now see, I've got a little group of 4 here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Every stitch has a V attached to it. So if you are working between the stitches, you've only got 3 spaces here, rather than if you're working into the top of the stitch. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 spots you can work with there. Can we get that closer? 1, 2, 3, 4 spots. If you make the mistake of working between the stitches, you've only got 3 spaces. So that's a common mistake. The other thing is what we call something. So we'll call, regardless of whether this is a treble or a double or a half treble or whatever it is, it's a stitch. So the pattern may say into the next stitch. So whether sometimes we might put into the next treble, the next double crochet, but sometimes we'll just say stitch. So a stitch can be a chain, it can be any of these things. So if it's working into the stitch, if it's working between a stitch. So the other thing that we work on, if you see these little V's, the ones that facing me, so I'm here on the crochet hook side. Some patterns ask you to work front loop only. So that's our front loop only there. And then that one is our back loop only. So that can be so we can use that back loop for something else, or it might be to add texture. And the other piece of navigation is that we call a space, might be a space, but usually it's called a chain space, a 1 chain space, a 2 chain space, a 3 chain space. So you can see I've got a space here. There's a chain above here. So this is a 1 chain space. So just so long as you know when you're navigating what is going to happen next, that you know where you're going. So into a stitch, into a space, into a 1 chain space, or into the top of something. So yes, so just keep an eye on that. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to show you how we join in a colour. The easiest way to join in a colour, I've got 1 stitch left to go here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do an incomplete stitch. So I'm going to get to here and then I'm going to grab my yarn, my new colour, and I'm just going to lay it on there. No knots, no nothing. Lay it on there and complete that stitch. Whoop, hang on. All 14 fingers, complete that stitch with a new colour and make a chain to fasten it on there, and that's not going anywhere. So we can pull this down, and we're firmly attached, and then we'll do whatever our pattern says to do next. So most patterns will start with chain. You can substitute your chain with a standing stitch. I'm just going to run along here and I'm going to start you off with a puff stitch. So a puff stitch is quite simply yarn over hook, I'm going to go into here and grab our yarn. We're going to draw it up to the height that we want our puff, and usually that's to the height of our row. We are going to yarn over hook again. So that's once. Go back in the same place and draw it through. So that's twice. Yarn over hook again. That's 3 times. So we're getting quite a little puff here. Yarn over hook through there, grab it again. So now we have 4 times. Your pattern on your abbreviations, just have a look and see how they ask you to do a puff, because they might want 5, 6, 7 times, but I've just got 4. We yarn over hook and then we carefully draw it all the way through and we make a chain to seal it up. So that is your puff stitch. So with your puff stitch, the chain that we seal it up with is not, if the next stitch is a chain, you haven't done a chain. That is part of the puff stitch. The other thing to note, that if you have to work into the top of a puff stitch, you'll be working into where you've made that chain. So when that goes that way, hang on, let me see if I can get, so you'll work into the top of there if you have to work into the puff stitch. So sometimes we'll work around the puff stitch too. So you might be asked to work around the puff stitch. So, and that sometimes will make it pop out even better. So that is a puff. I will do one more puff. Just a second. Yarn over hook. I'll go into here. Draw it up to the height of the row. Yarn over hook. In. Draw it up to the height of the row. That's twice. 3 times. 4 times. Yarn over hook. Draw through the whole caboose and seal it off with a chain. So there's your little puffs. So see, they're not exactly the same size. It's just a matter of practice to get them the right size. So what I'll do now is I will do a popcorn. So the popcorn, for this pattern, I have used a 4 popcorn. So there's one, I'm going to do it in this gap. 1 treble, 2 trebles, 3 trebles. So some popcorns have more, some popcorns have less. Just have a look in your abbreviations. Okay, so there is 4 trebles. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. We take our hook out, leave our loop hanging out there. Then we find where we started. So there is the start of the stitch. So in this case, because this is the front of our work, we are going to pop our stitch on there and we're going to slip that through and seal it up with a chain. So that's a popcorn. So it's still a bobble, but see, it sticks out a little more and it's a little more textured. So the other thing that happens with popcorns, if you're working on the back of your work, so let's do another one and we'll finish this one off as if the back was facing us. 1, 2, oh, missed. 3, 4. All right, so if this was the back of our work, instead of going this way and sealing it off, we want our popcorn to face the front. We can actually pull our popcorn the other way. So now it's facing on the other side of our work. If you mess that up, it's not a great drama. You've just got to go along and push them all through, and they're not quite as neat, but it's not the end of the earth if you have put your popcorns on the wrong side. So popcorns are simply your 4 trebles in this case, and then joined up and finished off with a chain. So again, that chain does not count as part of the pattern. It is part of the popcorn. So the next one that we need to have a look at, I'll just do a couple of chains to move along a little bit. We use front post and back post to get texture. So if we're asked to work around the front post, that's our front post. So you can see our post, that's out there, our stitches. Hang on, can I get a little closer without going blurry? So you can see that part of the stitch is our post. So that's our post. So if I do, I'm going to do a few, I'll do 5. Let's do around the post. So these are trebles around the post. And I'll do one, see if I can, so this is front post. We'll do some front posts and then we'll do some back posts. And then we'll have a look at how different they look. And the difference between the front post and the back post, it might be, depends on whether you're going on a front row or a back row. Depends on what the pattern writer, where they want the texture. So there's 4. So if I turn that over, you can see that we have got, see that we've got that texture there. I'll just grab this here. So that's this here. That's how we've done that. So we've got this here, and there's another one here. So this, one of them's front post and one of them's back post, to get that 3-layered effect. It might be easier to see here. So there's sort of 3 layers there, and then there's another layer on top of that. So there's a few, and that's how we get that gorgeous texture. These popcorns are worked down in here, and this row, see that's around the post of the popcorn, and that just makes that popcorn pop out. So let's just have a look at back post. So back post is yarn over hook. We're going to go this way now. Hopefully we can see that all right. So we'll do that. Yarn over hook, we're going to go back post. So this is adding some texture the other way. So what I'll do when I get to the end, oh, I've run out. That's okay. I'll just do a couple of stitches over this gap, because this little piece I'm working with was not anything in particular. It was just I just thought I'd whip up a bit that I could work onto. So let's have a look what that looks like now. So you can see these are front posts, and there's our texture behind there. These are back posts, so there's our texture and a couple over the gap. Let's put one more in, see what that looks like. So this is what happens when you're designing stuff. You just muck about with it till you get it to look right. So now we have, that's our texture of our back posts. They're just over the gap, and there's, so you can see how easy it is to get the texture happening. So I'll get to the end of here, and I will show you an alternative you can use when you're turning, so that you don't have that turning chain. It just can look a little bit neater, especially when you're doing granny squares. All right, so if we turn, this is a standing stitch, so in this case it's a standing treble. We just draw our loop up to the height of our row. We yarn over hook, hang on to that, and what we do, we go through there. Hang on, I've got a knitting needle here. So we're actually going to draw our hook not through here, we're actually going to draw it through that back part there. So we're actually going to go through there. I need something white, don't I? Fortuitously, there is a tissue on my table. That might be, yeah, that's a bit easier to see, isn't it? So you can see that we are going to pull our hook through the back there rather than through there. So we're going to yarn over hook, then we're going to go through there and around, and then finish it off, and we get a mock stitch. I'll do that again. It's a bit hard to see whether you guys can see this or not. So bring it up to the height of the row, yarn over hook, through there and around, and yarn over hook, draw through. So that's a standing stitch. So anything that starts as a 3 treble at the start of the row, you can substitute it with a standing stitch. So let's just have a look. When we came up before, I should change colour, shouldn't I, so we can see what's going on a bit more. I've got a bit of red, hopefully we can see that. I thought I should be using lighter colours because they're a bit easy to see, but now I've got my beautiful tissue background. So all right, so I'll do another join. So I'll do an incomplete treble, yarn over hook, draw through 2, and I'm going to add our red one on, and we're going to do 1 chain to seal that off. So then I'll do my standing stitch, yarn over hook, through the back, around and over. So these ones were back post before. So if I do front post for these ones now, we're going to get that double layer effect happening. So that gives you that's what we've done with that, with this, to get that layering, that lovely texture happening. And there is a gap between each set, which is where we've placed the popcorns for extra texture. So these are front posts. So now we have got 3 layers there. So you can see, we'll go and do the next bit, because this one, because we had that little gap there, doesn't look quite as nice, but we'll just move along here. What we'll do is, I've got a few stitches that don't belong to anything. We'll do some front posts, some front loop only. So front loop only. And then I can show you what the front loop only looks like. There it is. So you can see the V, front loop only. All right, so I think I've got one more before we end up into that textured part up here, where we'll do that as back post. All right, so that's our front loop only, and it just leaves like a little textured ridge along here. This is a bit loose, so it's not a great example, but it just gives a textured rib. Sometimes you might use this on the back of your work to travel along here with a different stitch, to bring maybe a different colour along the back that's hidden and pops out somewhere periodically, and then it stays at the back. And that's sometimes why we use front loop and back loop, so that we can use that row twice if we do that. So this one our texture was this way, so we're going to do back loop here. And this is just to give you a bit of a vision on what happens to get that texture looking as it has on the one I've done. So back loops, back post. Okay, there you go. So now we have the 3 layers there. So you can see that was our first layer, and that's our second layer. So this one was front post and this one's back post, but because we've worked one from the front, one from the back, you can see the different sort of texture we've got. I'll just run along here and I'll work around a popcorn. I'll just work a couple of stitches over this gap just to use up the gap, and then what we'll do, the puffs and the popcorns, we'll just show you how we work around them. So that's a popcorn. So if your pattern says it's going to be front post, so, or it might say around the popcorn, you would tend to go that way if you're on the front. If you're on the back side, you would go the other way to get it to look right, but your pattern will tell you. So all we're doing is going around the popcorn, and it should make the popcorn kind of stick out. It'll pop out. So there it is, popping out behind there. There's our puff. So I'll get rid of that, that's annoying. There's our puff. We'll go around our puff. Same thing, makes it look like it pops out, and it just gives it a bit more definition. There we go. So you can see that's made that really pop out, rather than just working into the back of it and over the top of it. So if I just pull this out, let's just have a look at the difference if we just work into the stitch rather than through it. So there we go. So that one it's not quite so defined when we've worked into the stitch, rather than if we worked around the popcorn. But your pattern will tell you that. So texture in crochet, you can put texture into any crochet. You can put texture into a granny square if you want. You can do a row where you're working around the posts of your trebles on your granny square. You know, there's not really any limits. But if you can identify what your stitch is, whether it's a double or a treble, make sure you've got enough stitches when you're working. And I actually sometimes find if I can't figure out where to start, so I will find a landmark and then I'll count the usable stitches backwards, and that will tell me sometimes where I need to start in a group. The problem with crochet patterns, they tell you what stitch to make and then where to put it, and then that can be a little tricky. All right, I hope this has been helpful. I know it's quick, but the gypsy lace pattern is fabulous, or the gypsy cowl is fabulous, so have a go at that.